Kent, how's the mood in Iqaluit right now?
Well, plenty of relief, Melissa, that's for sure. Even if you had a vehicle and a schedule flexible enough to meet the water distribution times, this is still a huge hassle for Iqaluit residents. It was another pickup and lineup. And the thing about Iqaluit is we're a city of lineups. You got to line up at the post office, you got to line up at the supermarket. So the removal of one more lineup, that is a legitimate load off the community's mind.
You know, so the armed forces, after a few setbacks, which we covered here on APTN National News, we're back to producing potable water for Iqaluit residents before the water all clear came in. How would you say the armed forces did in their service delivery through all of this?
Well, there's a phrase from the Star Wars movies that really applies here. From a certain point of view. Now, on one hand, they were only able to provide water for 13 of the 60 days we were without it. On the other hand, they took equipment that had never been used in this environment before by them to a setting above the tree line, and they still managed to make it work. So one of the things the Armed Forces does do is analyze their performance from different operations such as this one. So from one point of view, they've got a lot to learn from this one. Residents, we're just happy to get those guys home before Christmas.
Well, and speaking of lessons learned, what's the takeaway? What are the lessons to be learned from public officials up there?
Well, the discussions about who knew what and when are going to be a big deal going forward. The amount of time between when the residents first discovered the smell of gas in the water and when the do not consume order came in was longer than a week. There's questions there, and when the Legislative Assembly gets back to work, they'll be asking those questions. Mm-hmm. And then the day it was announced, the Health Department knew early in the day that they were going to put in a do not consume order. They didn't tell residents until 6 o'clock that night. We only found out at around 3 o'clock that day when the mayor put it out in his Twitter account, despite the wishes of the health department. So there's going to be lots of questions as to how information was managed throughout this crisis, for sure.
You know, there's that bigger issue at play when it comes to Iqaluit's water, the safety of the overall water supply. Does this 60 days change how residents are looking at the water supply? Does it change how city officials are looking at it?
Well, that's the thing, Melissa. It's a much bigger issue than just these last 60 days. The long-term issue is our reservoir doesn't store enough to supply for the city. It's just simply not big enough. Now, the city estimates anywhere between $120 and $180 million worth of work to get the water system where it needs to be. And as is usual in Nunavut, one problem sort of leads right into the next one. Take a look at the water issue. Because we don't have enough water, we can't zone new lots for building because there's not enough water to supply those apartments. Because we can't build new lots, the current price of housing in Nunavut, in Iqaluit in particular, is going through the roof. So the water crisis is hurting the housing crisis. All of these things are connected. So in a lot of ways, these water problems aren't the end of it. This is really just the beginning, Melissa.
Well, we appreciate you taking the time to update us, and we're happy for you, Kent, and your family. No more lugging water like the good old days. I'm sure that lucky for you, you've got some big strapping kids that would have helped you out there, but I'm sure you guys are all fitter than ever from hauling those big pails of water that we saw last week.
3 flights of stairs, Melissa. I live at the top of 3 flights of stairs. I'm happy it's over too. Koyanamik.